sometimes I have an experience of my body where I feel like I'm just a bunch of parts, and those parts, they're not always fitting together right, and some of those parts feel like they're broken, or I'm missing some parts, and I'm trying to put it back together, and I can never seem to hold it all in the right way. And then there's other times where I experience my body not as that, but as this profound miracle, this glowing, sparkling, throbbing, fantastic expression of the wonder that is existence. And there I feel that life is worthwhile. And these two different experiences of my body, they translate out in lots of other ways too. I notice that when I think about things like 200-hour trainings and yoga centers struggling to meet their rents, so they have to try to sell more class packages, and yoga teachers, showing up and having a few students in class and feeling crappy, like they're not successful. That makes me feel like that way where I'm broken. But when I think about my weekly teachers class, where I'm getting together with podcast listeners like you, and we're like coming together and talking about real stuff and connecting and working through all of these many obstacles, that's when I feel like the direction I want to go in. And if that sounds like a direction that you want to go in, I want to invite you to join us. It's the J. Brown Yoga Weekly Teachers Class. You can find it at jbrownyoga.com. All right, we're on. How's it going? This is J. Brown Yoga Talks podcast. My name is J. Brown. If you're new, welcome to you. Today's podcast is a panel discussion that I recorded from the Hauora Yoga Conference in New Zealand last month. And so there might be a bunch of new people showing up here who've not listened to the podcast before, maybe. And if that's the case, I just want to let you know that I usually spend a few minutes here talking about some stuff, kind of checking in with people. And, some people are into that. They like that part of the podcast. It's something I've been doing from the beginning. But, some people aren't. And if you're not, you can go ahead and skip ahead. The conversation usually starts somewhere between 10 to 15 minutes in. I try not to make it longer than that. Sometimes I've been able to make it shorter. But it is part of my process of doing this podcast. Sometimes I think my rambling on before it seems unrelated to people who are new. Like, why is this guy talking about all this stuff? I came to listen to the episode about yoga therapy in New Zealand. Why do I care about what's going on in this guy's life? So maybe you don't. Maybe you don't care, and that would be fine. I really would not be the least bit offended. But I know there are some of you, because you've reached out to me, who like this part of it, where I touch base with you. It's something I really do for me. Those of you who've been around from the very beginning, you remember I used to talk about this a lot when I first started it, that this was this kind of meditation and this process for me. So, this week I came up against myself. That's certainly not the first time. But I feel that, I don't know, I did that whole big trip, and then I was back and I was putting out all that controversial stuff, the podcast episodes and then the blog, and I was sort of like putting myself out there, and then I was getting feedback, and then I was just in this very reactive place where I didn't feel that I was operating from a place of choice. I was operating from this place of like reacting to what was happening. And consequently, I just feel like some behaviors in me came out that haven't come out in a long time. And it wasn't a good feeling. And, I guess what really sealed the deal was just this afternoon, I talked to my dad. And I don't talk to my dad that often these days. And I'm going to visit my dad next month. And it will be the first time that I've seen my dad in, I believe it's 7 years, which is, I know, a very long time. And it's too long a story to tell here. But I was talking to my dad, and he reads my blog every month, I believe, since I started doing it. So it's a long time. I know he reads it, and he made a comment to me. And he doesn't usually make any comments to me about my writing. But he made this comment to me that it seemed like I was angry, that I turned really angry when I'm talking about the yoga industry, and he didn't remember me, or he doesn't think of me that way, as being angry. And I wonder, I don't know, do I come off angry to people? Did that blog post that I wrote about Yoga Lines, was that angry? I look and I see there was some incendiary word choices. And that might just be an old pattern of mine where I'm trying to stir things up, But I have gotten clearer about what it is, like why I get the way that I get when it comes to Yoga Alliance. And I did record with Carrie Mayorga, the board president of Yoga Alliance, yesterday. It's not going to post for another couple weeks because basically this is the deal. Next week is like Christmas. And I didn't want to be talking about the Yoga Alliance and this stuff that's brought out all this like not great stuff in me on Christmas. So next week we're leaving this. Like today's podcast is a discussion that bears relevance. It's not direct because I'm not talking to someone from the Yoga Alliance. I'm talking to someone from Yoga Australia, and Donna Fari's on the panel and a whole bunch of other people. Everybody gets introduced at the beginning. But certainly the conversation we're having is about standards, and it's about the way that standards would be enforced. So it's certainly relevant, although it's not like direct. But the conversation I had with Carrie Mayorga yesterday, it is. I went all the way there with the board president of the Yoga Alliance. It was a very good talk, and I think it illuminates a lot. And you are going to get to hear it, but not for another, it looks like it's going to be actually 3 weeks, because next week we're going to listen to Neil Boyd. I've mentioned him. It's going to be my Christmas gift to you. And then the week after that, I'm gonna give it away because I just want everybody to know. Tao Porchon Lynch. I went and met the oldest yoga teacher on the planet. I took her yoga class, and then I sat in a room with her and recorded a conversation with her one-to-one. So we're going to ring in the new year with that. So for Christmas, we're going to listen to my friend Neil Boyd, who's like a warm hug. And then we're going to ring in the new year with Tao Porchon Lynch. And then we are going to revisit, and hopefully I'll maybe have my wits about me a little bit more. And I will share, because I really do think that I've gotten to the bottom of it some for myself. I said last week that I was conflicted. Well, I feel less conflicted now, and I will share that with you going forward. But like I said, we're not going to be there for the end of this year. We're going to finish the year on a heart note, because that's what I need. I need to restore my heart here at the end of this year. And then we will tackle all of it a little bit later. Let me say something to anyone listening who maybe owns or manages a studio, or maybe you're just a teacher who has to do the work of scheduling and class payments and accounting, and you're probably using MindBody Online, and at one time or another you were pulling your hair out and wishing that there was an alternative. Well, there is, and that alternative is KarmaSoft. They are our longest standing sponsor. Rudy Senecal, the owner of KarmaSoft, has been on the show before. You can go back and listen to that episode. We talk all about how I used that software at my center in Brooklyn, and my experience of dealing with Rudy and that company, and why I'm such a fan of it, and why I'm so happy to have them as a sponsor. So listen, if you're one of those people and you're dealing with MindBody Online and you want to try something different, I want to encourage you to check it out. It's KarmaSoft. You can find it at karmasoftonline.com. Also, I got a couple of gigs coming up. I am going to be in London at Try Yoga Camden. All my UK friends, come hang out. I will be there January 11th through 13th. I'm also going to be in Tel Aviv, Israel, January 18th through 20th. You can find out about those gigs and more. You can listen to the archives of the podcast and read my blog and find all of my online yoga video stuff Everything can be found at jbrownyoga.com. All right, then. I will touch base with you on the other side for just a moment. Maybe just, say a little bit more about what we've got coming. But for now, I think it's time for us to get to it, to listen to this panel discussion that I moderated in Auckland, New Zealand at the Hauora Yoga Conference 2018. Okay, I think the minute has rung, and we're trying to keep on a tight schedule. So I'm going to try to do that today. Thank you, everyone who's come. Welcome, welcome. We're here to have a talk today, I think, a panel discussion on yoga therapy in New Zealand. And let me introduce who's here on the panel first. I'm getting to know everybody as well. At the end there is Felicity Malloy. Next to her is Leanne Davis. And to my left here is Katie Lane. To my right, Donna Fari. And to her right, Jack Wilson. Is that correct? All right. And is there supposed to be someone else here, or am I mistaken? Vincent? Is Vincent coming? No? That's you. You're standing in. Gotcha. Okay. Well, I thought that to start us off today, we would go around the panel, and I'm always curious about why someone thinks they were chosen to be on the panel. And I mean that in the sense of what is it about the work that you've done, or what is it about your experience that you think someone might have thought, oh, maybe this person should be on this panel about yoga therapy? So, does anybody want to go first? Jack will go first.
Well, I'm kind of here by default, personally, but I think Vincent, I'm sort of representing him in Hatha Yoga. Vincent's been establishing a training program through Hatha Yoga Therapy for quite some time now, and is probably one of the few who is teaching yoga therapy in New Zealand, and for that, that's it's got a bit to offer in terms of the discussion that's going on here today. Quite simple.
And do you yourself identify as a yoga therapist?
Yes, I do. I do quite a bit of work in the community in yoga therapy, and have done for quite some time. And plus, I've worked quite a bit with Vincent in terms of establishing manuals, and we have a lot of discussion at home around, a lot of the content and issues that we come across. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And are you training people in yoga therapy?
Not myself personally, no. Yeah.
But Vincent is.
Yes, he is. Yeah. So he's in China at the moment doing exactly that right now.
He's doing yoga therapy training.
Yeah.
And yes, you can talk right into that microphone. Thank you.
Bit of beatboxing.
That's good. Yeah, don't be shy. Right into it.
Cool.
Well, great. Is there anything in particular that you came to the panel today that you want to hear about? Do you have any particular questions or things that you've come today that you want to know about?
Yes. I think the discussion around the regulation of yoga therapy is quite interesting to me. I'm a little bit cynical about it, I have to say, so I'm really interested to hear the other side of the argument.
Great. I appreciate you being frank like that. I should have probably set some ground rules. I didn't. I'm hoping that we can be really frank. And, I was involved in the very earliest discussions at the IAYT, the International Association of Yoga Therapists, conversations like this one.
Yep.
So I just think now's the time to speak.
Okay.
You know what I mean? If you've got a viewpoint, I think now's the time to speak it. And I think we can all agree that we're going to be open to everybody's viewpoints, right?
Yep.
That this isn't a moment where we're trying to make the decisions about what's going to happen so much as have a discussion about what might be possible.
Yeah. Great.
Cool. Do you want to go next, Tom? You can say no, and I'll pass it to somebody else.
I'm always a little perplexed why I'm asked to come onto these panels, because I don't personally identify myself as a yoga therapist. and nor do I train yoga therapists. And yet, I believe that I work very therapeutically just because of the model, the pedagogic model that I filter my teaching through. So if there's anything that I would really like to explore today, I'm kind of always the devil's advocate on these panels. I would actually like to see a restoration of yoga in general taught as a fundamentally therapeutic experience. So when yoga is taught through a teacher who has really good foundations, the very first time they come into a class, they might leave that class feeling physically better, mentally calmer, emotionally more stable, and connected in a way that they might not have ever felt connected. I've had people come into their very first yoga class who said that was a very profound experience for me, sometimes just through having a nice long relaxation. That is generally not the experience that the public is having now in the commercialized version of yoga as a 50-minute workout with movements that have had Sanskrit names added to them. So, yeah, I think there's a more fundamental question at this pivotal point in time, which is how do we reclaim the capital Y in the yoga? And one of the analogies that I sometimes use is that you wouldn't go to your favorite cafe and say, I want milk, sugar, hold the coffee, right? And unfortunately, that is kind of what's happening when people go to yoga studios. They're getting the trappings of yoga, the mechanical experience of it, without the depth of the tradition and the philosophy behind it that could give them a much deeper, encompassing experience, which is fundamentally therapeutic. Yeah. So there's more that I'd like to say, but I'm going to hand this over to Katie to...
Well, I think you made it obvious why you're on the panel.
Oh, that was really refreshing to hear. Thank you for that perspective. I guess I think I'm on the panel because I've worked in the area of what I would call yoga therapy, meaning a one-on-one supported experience of yoga outside of a classroom setting for people who might have injuries, illness, or particular concerns or reasons why they weren't stepping foot into a yoga studio. When I first started working therapeutically with people, it was mainly based around physical injuries and physical illnesses. Unfortunately and sadly, I became a go-to person in the city I was working at for the person to see when they had yoga-related injuries. So that became another part of the work that I did, was working with students who I had never met before, who hadn't been to my classes, but who were coming in with ongoing injuries from the practices they were doing regularly. And then because the city that I was living and working in became the place of many, many experiences with ongoing earthquakes, the physically related therapeutic work I was doing very quickly changed into a little bit of ad hoc mental health support, which became a very pivotal part of the work I was doing in Christchurch, and an ongoing real interest of mine in seeing where yoga is going and can go in the forms that it's already existing inside of studios as it's being taught in groups, and also in a one-on-one setting where yoga can go to support people with mental health. So I guess that's why I was asked to be here. And I also want to say I'm coming to this panel with as many questions, I feel like, as I have any contributions to make. It's an exciting time. There's so much interest in this area of work, so I'm just really honored to be a part of it.
Hi. My reason for being on this panel, I think, started 4 years ago when I was in my role as the president of Yoga Australia. I was invited by some teachers in Auckland to come over and have a chat, and they had an interest in, or they were running training programs, and said there were some conversations coming up in New Zealand about how people may either distinguish their own teacher training or how the public may differentiate between this teacher training from that teacher training. And so they knew that Yoga Australia has certain standards of registration of both trainings and individual yoga teachers and yoga therapists. And so I was invited to come and talk about how that could extend to New Zealand. And so that was, 2015 or so. So we worked on it really hard for a year, mostly remotely. And by 2016, we were able to launch Yoga New Zealand as a way of responding to a request from some of the New Zealand yoga community. Actually, I'd come out that first year and we did surveys of New Zealand yoga teachers, and I went around the countryside and met people as much as we could and tried to find out what it was that people wanted. So that resulted in the response of establishing Yoga New Zealand. And again, I think one of my messages today is about voluntary registration. That's something that I'm sort of interested in, the discussion about mandatory registration or government legislation or voluntary registration. So I now currently have ended up being the president of Yoga New Zealand and Yoga Australia, and I also work on the certification committee for the International Association of Yoga Therapy as well. So I'm well entrenched in that kind of world of regulation, and but I also hold both sides. I also see it's the solution for some things, not for all things. I'm a big fan of voluntary registration, that there's registering bodies around the world that do provide standards, representation for yoga professionals, opportunities for networking, professional development and those things, and that it's a model that's there that's very useful for those things, but that the choice is in the end up to the yoga community themselves what they want to do. And that's very much my interest, has been for the last 4 years of coming to New Zealand and having the great privilege to meet so many wonderful teachers and therapists here. But that's what I'm always really interested in about, New Zealand's so fantastic. I feel like you're the world leaders in lots of things, and have a place to be quite creative, I think, and to really define yourselves in what is best for the yoga community here, what is best for the yoga profession here. And there's a number of registering bodies, including your own Yoga New Zealand, that you can align to if you want to, or as a community you decide you don't want that kind of regulation. I think that's my interest, and I'm really, really happy to serve the yoga community here however I can with the information that I have about how those kind of regulatory bodies work. I also have been a long career in complementary medicine that started out in body work and massage, and I now practice acupuncture as well, and Ayurveda and yoga teaching and yoga therapy as well. So it's been my life, all this sort of stuff. So that's what brings me. I hope I'm of use.
Great, thank you.
Hi. I have spent my adult life on the edge of marginalised fields such as dance, massage, naturopathy and yoga. And my interest has been, and my study has been, in education and how to cavort with education sufficiently to bring about standards that are recognisable across the board. I've had the two ways that I think of this is that this panel is also on the edge. If you look at us, we're kind of on the margin of this particular group. I work at Wellpark College of Natural Therapies, which has recently moved out to Kawaipurapura in Albany, which has a difficult history that's being somewhat supported and I think also healed as we move into understanding the relationship we place with the land there. I was a yoga program leader for 5 years, taking on an incredibly rich traditional form of educating yoga. And I've also, at Wellpark College, there's a yoga therapy diploma. And yesterday, we were given approval to do a new massage diploma. And I've already said I want that yoga therapy diploma back out of its shelf so that we can look at it. So it's really timely for me to be here. I was fortunate to attend the first global consortium of yoga therapy in Japan in May, which is a meeting of international like-minded people of trying to figure out the not just the definition but the beauty of yoga therapy and the way that it can support and care for people both on individual levels and in the chaos of, say, medicine and the bridgeway possibly, which Wellpark's vision encompasses, is for integrative care. So I fully believe that yoga therapy can sit alongside naturopathy, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and so on at World Health Organization level as a way of understanding how individuals are supported, are able to prevent, and are also then able to understand themselves better as individuals and in communities. So,
great, thank you. Leanne, hold on to that, because thank you guys for that. I think, again, it's clear why everybody's on the panel. Thank you. I think where we should go next is we should maybe talk a little bit about what are the existing standards. I don't know. I'm not from New Zealand, so I don't know exactly if it's the same here. I certainly know what's going on back where I'm from in the States. So I'm curious to hear from you, Leanne, since you are head of the Yoga Australia, Yoga New Zealand. You're the person I would ask.
I'm the standards police.
What are the current standards? I guess, did Yoga New Zealand take the same ones that Yoga Australia did, and what are they? Did you guys adopt the same 200-hour model from the Yoga Alliance, or did you do something a little bit different?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So, yes, Yoga New Zealand has adopted all the same standards of Yoga Australia. Now, Yoga Australia has been an association that's been in place for 20 years next month, actually. And I think for most of that time they've had the standards as they are now. Oh no, not all of it actually, but it was decided by a team of people, much like the group that you work with, Jay, for IAYT. There was kind of a standards review group of people that work for quite some time to decide what does it take to be a yoga teacher, what do you need to know. So what they came up with at that time, and the standards still apply, is that it takes a minimum of 350 hours to become a yoga teacher, and it was considered that you just couldn't get through all the stuff in anything under that. So to be a level 1 registered yoga teacher with Yoga New Zealand, it's a minimum of a 350-hour training that takes place over 1 year. So it's not that you can go and do all your hours in a weekend or a month either, but that you're under supervision and have that mentoring relationship with a teacher for a minimum of 1 year. And then there's 2 other levels of three now, the levels of registration. Level 2 is for teachers to have the recognition that they've been teaching for 5 years or more and have completed another 150 hours of education to have 500 hours of yoga teaching education. And then level 3 is the senior teachers have 10 years of teaching experience with a minimum of 1,000 hours of education. And now, since the end of 2016, we've also been registering yoga therapists. The yoga therapy standards, it ends up the same as IAYT with the 1,000 hours of education minimum in total. So the yoga IAYT is an 800-hour program, but the minimum prerequisite is the 200 hours, where for Yoga New Zealand, you need to be a level 1 teacher. So you've done your 350 hours over a year training with 2 years of teaching experience before you can enter a yoga therapy program, which will then be an additional 650 hours over a minimum of 2 years. So it ends up the same amount of hours, but the prerequisite is longer. Yoga New Zealand and Yoga Australia at the moment also have a provisional teacher registration to accommodate the 200-hour teachers. So you're not a registered yoga teacher, but can be have a kind of provisional teaching registration, which you can only hold for, it's 1 year? I keep thinking it's 3 years. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I have to check that, I'm sorry. 3 years? 2 years. Okay. Anyway, it can't be renewed, so you can join as a provisional member, but you have a certain time period that you must upgrade the extra 150 hours to be then a registered level 1. But it's a way of including the 200-hour members into the profession and exposing them to professional development. And some people, again, it's a training provider opportunity that people can offer the 150-hour upgrades to get people to a level 1 registered teacher.
Thank you. And is it the same sort of registration process as Yoga Alliance in terms of after someone registers their program, does Yoga New Zealand or Yoga Alliance do any further oversight of those programs more? Because that's a big complaint in the States, that Yoga Alliance never checks about what anybody's doing, and I'm just curious if that's different.
Yeah, it's a great question, Jay. We have the great fortune in Australia and New Zealand of small population. So we know everyone. So when I work in IAYT, it's sort of like, how do you know this is going on? It's like, they're my friends. I know these people. We've got 5 yoga therapy programs registered, who usually someone that's running a yoga therapy program is a senior teacher. So most of us have been around for a long time together, and you know the people running the programs. We talk to them all the time. We're often shared faculty on the courses and things. The same as 100 yoga therapists registered between Yoga Australia and New Zealand, and about another 100 teacher training schools. So that's something we usually actually honestly personally know all the people, but we do have an audit process. So at least once a year we do one face-to-face audit of a training provider. So we go out, it takes about half a day, and we sit with them and go through everything to make sure they're fulfilling the requirements of their course registration. So that happens. We do have a really active grievance policy process as well. So if a grievance comes up, it means that we're probably going out and doing an audit and having a chat anyway. We also have the training working group, which is a group of volunteers. All this is volunteer, by the way. I'm a volunteer in all those roles.
That's actually an important point.
Because
the organizations bring money in, and like where that money goes
it goes to the members, not to the people that run it. So we do have some paid staff in New Zealand and a few in Australia too, but primarily all of this, and the same with IAYT, is run by volunteers. So we have a team of volunteers who do desktop audits as well. So we go and look at people's websites and check that what they're saying the courses are and the content of the courses is actually what we've registered them for, and if it isn't, we ring up and have a chat and that kind of thing too. So we are actually really engaged in that process.
I mean, I'm sorry. To me, that's interesting because what you're saying is a lot of the oversight is about relationships that are happening between the people who are involved. But sometimes when we're talking about creating these standards, and I think we should actually clarify the terms, like registration, standards, certification,
accreditation,
licensure. some of these have legal ramifications around them. From what I understand, in terms of, like the Yoga Alliance right now is in fact in the midst of a standards review, and David Lipsius left, and that's a whole other story. But the issue there is that you have what's called a registration. So you register yourself, and that is mostly been on an honor system. Like, you have a little bit more of a review process in place, but if it's not personal relationships that you just trust that person, people are often looking for an objective metric. That's what I'm getting to. And the objective metric that is often landed on is the hours. And I guess that's always been the sticking point, is like, you're not policing the hours, you're making sure that people are doing what they say they're going to do, or you're trying to hold them to account for what they say they're going to do.
To a point, when we're doing a face-to-face audit or in conversations with people, we are looking at competency. So, and there's evidence. Like, we don't sign anyone off unless, how can you show us that you're actually, what's the content that's being provided? They need to have the work of their students. So show me what your students have submitted, what assessments have you done, class notes, teachers' notes. There has to be evidence to show this is the content of that category of education, this is how it's been delivered, this is the assessment, and this was the competency that they're signing off. So we do ask to see that. Mm-hmm. Also, every 3 years, the registration of courses comes up for renewal. Same with IAYT, where it's reviewed again. So you don't automatically just ring up and send in your money. Your course is reviewed all over again to check, because most courses probably will change in 3 years. Faculty will change. Sometimes the location changes, and it's all reviewed again and goes through that same sort of application process.
Got you. I guess the key to that, though, is that there's a board. There's a board who it is at their discretion to determine whether or not that program is up to snuff. Would you say?
Yeah, in the end it is. The team of volunteers, there's like a training working group that has a look at it. We've just become a company, actually, in the last few weeks, that now has a board. So those things would go to a board, and we have the CEO and the staff that would look at it. But always in those sort of procedures we're talking about, those processes, it's always with the aim of working together. Like, we really are not going out there to strike off people's registration.
No, I don't assume anything like that. But
It's the most wonderful. I love doing it. It's a really, really lovely, creative sort of relationship and a time together of seeing, what people are doing, what they could do better, and certainly what the association could do better. I mean, this informs us. It's been my passion through my term of talking to members like here as well, and training providers, and saying, what do you need? What is yoga education? What do your students want? What's relevant? And if we're going to have these standards, they have to be absolutely relevant and priced in a way that can be delivered, and they have to be what people want. So that's the opportunity when we have those kinds of conversations too.
Great. Well, okay, I guess the next thing that's clear. I mean, does anybody in the audience have a question? If someone has a question, you can put a hand up, and we can take questions from the audience, and we'll have some time afterwards. But if questions come up while we're talking and you want to put a hand up, sometimes it's better to have it in the midst rather than all at the end. So feel welcome to put a hand up if you want to ask something. Please.
So just a little point of information. What Leanne was talking about, for those who have short attention span like me, there's a little pile of papers over there headed up something like curriculum levels. So it just describes each of those levels. Yeah, it describes the whole model in a 2-page handout. Great.
Okay, I guess the next thing I want us to go to, which has been the ongoing... Oh, please, go ahead, say something.
Beg your pardon. I'm just curious, Leanne, just with the terms of the criteria for passing some of these courses. As far as I know, there's not a lot of rigorous assessment, and I don't hear of many people not reaching competency levels. It seems really easy to pay a fee, do a course, get a certificate.
I guess for me, and thank you for the question, to me that is what I was kind of pointing to. Sometimes it's about hours. So if someone... pays, then they're there for the hours, then they get the certificate, which I guess is what you're asking about. You're saying how do we make sure that the hours are filled with something that leads to someone being a quality yoga teacher?
Absolutely, yeah. There needs to be some substance behind it rather than just turning up. You don't know how much people are engaged in these courses, how much information they're taking on board, and how they can apply it, their capacity to apply it. Because I think that's when the real understanding comes out, is when people are actually going out there and using that information or not.
I'm curious why you're curious. Like, why are you here? Why? I mean, you could be doing a asana class or something this afternoon, but so I'm just curious what the primary motivation is to be in on this discussion about yoga therapy. Is it that you're considering becoming a yoga therapist? Is it that you're already... How many of you are already yoga therapists in here? Okay. And how many of you are
20%.
considering going down that track?
Another 40%.
Yeah. And how many of you are yoga studio directors considering offering a training for yoga therapy?
3%.
Okay, well that would be good. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so I guess the next thing that we have to ask is, what is the difference between yoga and yoga therapy? And this is an ongoing debate in people that I know. And if you look at the definition that the IYT came up with, it says yoga therapy is the process of empowering individuals to progress toward improved health and well-being through the application of the philosophy and practice of yoga. So to me, I've always felt like that sounds like yoga teaching to me. Oh, what's that definition? Go ahead.
So I'm not going to tell you who wrote this definition. It wasn't me.
I can see that.
I'm putting my thumb over the name.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so this is this person's definition. When clients seek out a yoga therapist or a therapeutic group, they are usually not coming to learn yoga, but to get help with or relief from some symptom or health condition that is troubling them. In most cases, the instruction focuses on their condition and how the yoga techniques can help them feel better or improve their function, rather than on the techniques or methods of yoga practice. Which sounds to me an awful like the description of allopathic medicine. And this is where I get really concerned that the primary reason that someone would go to a yoga therapist is not because they really want to learn about yoga. They just want to deal with a symptom. And like, if you don't mind, I would love to... I apprenticed with Judith Lasater. Some of you know of her. Yeah, Judith Hansen Lasater. And she had a PhD in East-West psychology, and she also was a registered physical therapist. And I had the good fortune to apprentice with her as a part of my 2-year training. And she didn't really, on the whole, take private clients. I don't think she calls herself a yoga therapist to this day. And when I asked her about that, she said, well, one of the reasons why I didn't continue as a clinical physical therapist, not that, I mean, there's some wonderful clinical physical therapists out there, but this was her explanation, was that we know that people don't really get better when their issues are treated in a reductionistic way, when we're just treating symptoms. So the person calling up and asking her the question, I've got a back problem, can I have a private with you? And her answer would be, well, I teach yoga, and if you would like to come to my beginning level class, I would be happy to teach you yoga and see how in that model it might assist you in healing your back. And just in the context of a teacher who's very well trained, she's limiting her class to 25 people, and she had anywhere from 2 to 4 assistants in her class, that person who was coming to learn yoga was learning a lot of things, not just how to get rid of the symptom of the pain in their lower back, which probably wouldn't have been cured anyway.
If you are hearing this message, then you're listening to the free version of J. Brown Yoga Talks. To hear the rest of our conversation, please subscribe to Podcast Premium at jbrownyoga.com/premium.